Podcast, Sunday Night Spectacular with David. So what do you got on tap for us, David?
Hey, I tell you what, this week we got a great show. We're going to start off by talking about a couple of the quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers still isn't signed. No news there with the New York Jets. And then we're going to move on to Baltimore. But further on down the line, we've got the Dallas Cowboys. We've got the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the San Francisco 49ers tonight. So let's begin with Aaron Rodgers. There still isn't anything happening. The word is that they have, talks are getting closer. The Packers are backing off of supposedly wanting the top first pick from the Jets. They claim that they never wanted the first round draft pick, but if that's not the case, then what is holding this up, Chris?
It's just he wants all this money. They don't want to pay it, Now he's asked for trade, but the problem is there is no one who wants him. I haven't heard
not Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers? Oh, my bad. Sorry. I was in the middle of sharing this. I have no clue at this point. I think I heard a rumor that the Packers want like $200,000 or something apart for the Jets to pay, plus 2 first rounds. And the Jets don't want to pay the money they're asking for. But I haven't heard a clear answer or a clear source that if it's legit or not.
Yeah.
That's what I've read in on.
Yeah. For me, I've heard that the sides are getting closer. And as I expect, I believe that what's going to happen is this is just a drawn out process until we get to the draft. The draft is coming up here in a few weeks, and they're going to want to have those, whatever picks that they're getting in exchange for Aaron Rodgers. They're going to want to use those picks this year, not wait till next year, so that they can try and improve their team. I'm sure they're looking around in their division, and they see all of the moves that Detroit has made on their defensive side of the ball, all the moves that Chicago has made throughout the whole team. Now, Minnesota hasn't done all that much, but they did bring in the new defensive coordinator. So they're going to have, probably a better defense to wrestle with in Minnesota, a much better Chicago team, and a Detroit team that already beat them last year when they had Aaron Rodgers, that's looking to improve on defense. Green Bay right now, I think everybody would have to say is probably the weakest team in that division, especially after they trade Rodgers to the Jets, which I think is eventually going to happen here before we get to the draft.
Yeah, I think it's going to happen. I mean, I can't see Green Bay holding on to him. I mean, that'd be stupid unless they're trying to get revenge for some odd reason against them. But I think it's just a big trade. Both sides are taking their time with making deals. No one wants to get in a bad trade.
Right.
So I think that's just the hold up at the moment. We should be here. I mean, how much weeks to the draft right now?
It's I believe it's on the 24th, so you're looking at 22 days away.
So you got 22 days. A lot could happen in the next 22 days. So I'm going to say within the next 22 days, we should know where the hell Aaron Rodgers goes. And if he's not traded to the Jets by the draft, then I'm curious on what's going to happen.
Yeah, that would be a whole nother situation at that point. But I think that there's nothing else that we can add at this point to this story. And so I want to move on to Lamar Jackson, who you began talking about. He's been offered some what I think is a pretty good deal. I know I'm not in his situation. People said he wanted a guaranteed contract. People said he wants, to be one of the highest paid quarterbacks. He wants financial security. He wants, he wants a lot,
Yeah.
and Baltimore has offered that to him. He has tweeted out that he has turned down a 3-year, $133 million contract. Fully guaranteed. Just because it's not 5, 7, 8, the 10 years that Patrick Mahomes got. Patrick Mahomes didn't get a fully guaranteed contract, but it's 3 years. They're willing to invest 3 years in him at a fully guaranteed contract, and he turned it down because it's not enough. Either the money's not big enough for him, the years aren't long enough for him. He has, mentioned, and we did not know this, that he had requested a trade on March the 2nd. He wanted to be, he wants to get out of Baltimore, I think, but there's no takers. The only team that has said anything about keeping their options open is the Indianapolis Colts. And I think the only reason that they're doing that is just so the other owners can all agree that there wasn't some form of collusion when, that's a big topic, is that, the reason he's not getting any, any bites in, well, first of all, nobody wants to pay 2 first-round draft picks. Nobody wants to give him a fully guaranteed contract. If he won't accept a 3-year fully guaranteed contract for $43 million a year, what the hell does this guy think he's worth? How many years does this guy, want in his contract? You're going to have to give up 2 first-round picks plus all that money? No wonder nobody wants them, Chris.
I don't blame anybody for wanting them. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it a million more times. Lamar Jackson's a good quarterback. For the lack of, to me, I feel like a lot has to do with his throwing. I'm not saying he's a bad thrower, but let's be honest, he's thrown less passes than most quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's demanding all this money. We know he can run. He runs until he gets hurt. He gets himself hurt every year. We know that. It's happened, the last 2 years now.
Yeah.
Both years he's been hurt by the end of the season. Your best player is out of the game because he rather run the ball more than throw the ball.
Yeah.
And now I'm really starting to think that this whole offense in Baltimore was literally designed for him to be a good quarterback. I'm really starting to think that because no one has jumped. There's been teams like Indianapolis Colts. Think about it. If this guy was as good as quarterback, he's trying to sell himself, why ain't the Colts picking up that phone? They got a defense to make the playoffs. I'm not sure if they got a quarterback to make the playoffs, though. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
If Lamar Jackson's so good, why ain't they trying to get him? Because that could be playoffs off for him. And think how big of a turnaround would it be for the Colts in that fan base if they could do that.
Well, and we're going to talk about the Colts and their situation here further down the road. But what I like to do at this time is I want to show everybody that right now, it sure feels like to me that Lamar Jackson is holding up the business end of everything that Baltimore can do this offseason. We've been going through the teams and showing the players that they've lost, the players they've re-signed, the trades, the franchise tags, and then the free agents. Baltimore has signed 2 free agents. Yes, they've re-signed 3 of their players, but this is the lowest amount of business that has been done by any team that we've evaluated thus far. And I would gather probably the least amount of business that's been conducted this offseason because Lamar Jackson is holding the whole thing up. They don't know how much money they may have to give him. It's holding it all up. the salary cap, how much money he's going to, if he were to accept the deal that they gave him, okay, the 3 years, $133 million guaranteed, I'm sure that it has probably got some of those years in there that they add to spread out the signing bonus, so that will give them flexibility with their salary cap money. They'll be able to bring in more free agents. They'll be able to re-sign some other players. They had to let Calais Campbell go to Atlanta. Okay. Yeah. They had to let Ben Powers go to Denver. They had to let Tristan Colon go. Now Josh Oliver, I don't expect to be a big loss because, you've got Isaiah Likely, who was a rookie last year. You've got, Mark Andrews is the top tight end there. So I'm not real concerned about that loss. They did do the restricted free agent tender on quarterback Tyler Huntley. I think at this point, he's basically their backup plan until they get into the draft. So many people have talked about it in the chat boards and I go to a group called Exceptional Sports News, and there's a lot of Baltimore Raven fans in there. And there's a gentleman named Keenan Mary, and Keenan talks about it all the time, that there is a chance because they hired the offensive coordinator from Georgia to be their new offensive coordinator. He wouldn't have a problem at all with them drafting Stetson Bennett in the middle rounds and turning him loose because he's going to know the offense. He has played a lot in college. He's a veteran quarterback when it comes to the system, when it comes to, the kind of plays that they're going to run. Yes, he'll have to get up to speed with the NFL, and maybe he wouldn't start right away. They'd go with Huntley early on, but I think that this is a real possibility that if they were to draft Stetson Bennett, that by midseason, if they couldn't get a deal done with Lamar Jackson, Stetson Bennett could be the starter at Baltimore before the year's out.
Yeah. He's definitely holding everything up. I'm sorry, Facebook just locked me on my account again.
You're all right.
This is so ridiculous, just sharing the thing and then they're like, oh, it's spam. No,
right.
It's literally me.
Well, listen, we've talked about the players they've lost. They re-signed Justin Hill. He'll be in there with Gus Edwards, and he'll be in there with I forget their starter's name right off the bat because I'm not a big Baltimore Raven follower. But they've got 3 guys that can run the football. They got their long snapper back. That's important for special teams. Now, what isn't on here is that they traded Chuck Clark, their safety, to the New York Jets. So that's another player that they lost in a trade, technically. They bring in Nelson Aguilar. He played for the Patriots the last couple of years after spending some time with the Raiders. He won a Super Bowl when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Foles was the quarterback, at that time. Trayvon Mullen comes over. He was actually picked up off of waivers from the Dallas Cowboys, and then they signed him to a contract extension. I think that was a cost-cutting move by Dallas. But
can you take over for a minute, David, while I go get my ID real quick? Because I think he just kicked us off of Facebook.
While he's doing that, I'm going to look up real quick here because I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the running back for Baltimore. Usually I'm sharp as a whip, but him and I are both tired, believe it or not, from a lot of stuff that's been happening. Here we go. J.K. Dobbins. Can't believe I couldn't remember that. So J.K. Dobbins was, is the running back. He's been injured also, but he's under contract. And so, looking here at Baltimore, once again, I just think that Baltimore's business this offseason is being held up by Lamar Jackson. And so, Here's something that we can talk about here briefly, and that is they had the owners' meetings this last weekend, and one of the things that they were talking about is flexing the Thursday night games. And the Thursday night game, you're supposed to only have to play a Thursday night game one time a year. Okay, unless you're the opening game of the season and then you got extra time, or it's a, Thanksgiving game, then you're only supposed to play one Thursday night football game a year. And they have made it now to where teams can play twice on a Thursday night football, but they're trying to get flexing. They're trying to be able to move a Sunday game to Thursday, and that means that the Thursday game would be on, a Sunday or possibly a Monday, which would be fine for the teams that get moved from Thursday to Sunday. But what you have is you've got a lot of fans out there that are planning these trips in advance. They make like pilgrimages to these games to see, certain teams, to go to Lambeau, to go to Dallas, to go to SoFi Stadium, and it's going to be a big deal. They're going to have hotels booked for a certain date in advance, the tickets bought in advance. And this is really, they're trying to make, excuses that this is a better deal for the fans, and it's not a better deal for the fans. Because if you move the games from a Sunday to a Thursday, it screws up everybody's planning, even if you're doing it a couple weeks in advance. Okay. And so, you got people that plan this from the beginning of the season when the schedule comes out. Now, I don't have a problem with a game that moves from Sunday to Monday. And I don't have a problem with the game that moves from early in the day on Sunday to Sunday night, because that's close enough that you're not wrecking an entire 3 or 4 days of somebody's life where, they had plans, to be there on a Sunday because they don't want to miss work. Now you got somebody that they may live in Kentucky. They got to fly to Philadelphia for the Philadelphia game. It was supposed to be Sunday. It ends up being on Thursday. They don't have their hotel booked in advance for that. They don't, they may have the ticket because the ticket was supposed to be for Sunday, but there's a lot of logistics that go into being able to have fans attend games. And I think while I would like to see better games on Thursday night, they can schedule the better games in advance, not have to flex them. Okay. I don't think flexing games into Thursday night is a good idea. I think it hurts the fans. And I think that, going forward, they were very close to passing this bill that was going to allow the flexing. But there was a great speech by John Mara, who is the half owner of the New York Giants, who stood up in front of cameras and said, this is not in service of the fans. It's going to be in service of Amazon. And nobody wants to hear that. Chris, have you followed along at all with the flexing on Thursday night and what a mistake it would be?
No, to be honest, I didn't hear nothing. I've been trying to get Facebook.
You're okay.
This just sucks because no one can see our stuff on Facebook right now.
Well, I tell you what, let me see if I can share it.
I don't even know if we're live.
I hit join, so I'm pretty sure we are.
If you can still see us on Facebook, do me a favor and send a comment.
Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. We seem to have one pretty much every week. We are live. I see us on the 4th and Goal. It says it's live now, 19 minutes ago. I am going to share this
Okay.
on my page.
I just wanted to make sure we're live because
We are.
Restream's showing me disconnected. So okay, we're good. I'm sorry guys. I'm back in it. It is what it is. Facebook will let me back in when they send me the email. I just wanted to make sure we're still going.
And I am going to tag some people really fast.
And you're gonna have to read some comments to me, Dave, because I can't see no comments until I get this email from.
No problem. I'll take care of that in a moment. I just want to, just catch you up on what I was talking about. Basically, what has happened is that they tried to take a vote for flexing in the, for the Thursday night games. Now, while we all would like to see, some Thursday night games be better, it's at the expense of the fans that are trying to attend the games. If they had a ticket for a Sunday night or a Monday night game and they're going to flex it to Thursday, people have, airfare and hotels to book and, just a whole lot of different things, the logistics that go into, attending a game, if you're from out of town, and so, I was telling, the folks out there that they were very close to passing the bill and that it was the owner of the New York Giants, John Mara, who stood up and said, hey, wait a minute here. This is not in service of the fans. This is, going to hurt the fans. And, he got some people to vote against it. And so they did not pass the bill this year, but they're only 2 votes away from getting flex scheduling on Thursday night, unless more fans, have a bit of an uproar here in an effort to, make sure they know that's not what we want.
I think the flexing shouldn't. I wanted the flexing because last year, man, they messed it up so bad. It was all the worst teams on the league. And I'm not saying that
they got to schedule better games. Yeah. It's up to them. They make the schedules. Okay. They can schedule good games on Thursday night, but they don't know how to tell NBC, sorry, you don't get the Dallas Cowboys on the opening Sunday night game because the first Thursday after their opening game, that's where we need the Dallas Cowboys to be. And so, they've got all these broadcast partners and now they've got streaming partners and, they got to try and make everybody happy because they're the ones lining their pockets with all this money so that they can afford to pay the Aaron Rodgers of the world $50 million a season. And if they don't, make the broadcast partners and streaming partners happy, then, they're going to have problems, in their boardrooms and everything. And so, I'm going through here and I'm tagging people and I'm telling you that after listening to what John Mara had to say, he's looking out for the fans. They can schedule better games. They know what games are better. And now they'll have a little bit more flexibility because there's going to be the opportunity for teams to play on Thursday night twice. It won't be mandatory that every team plays a Thursday night game. And if that's the case, we'll see Kansas City. We'll see Buffalo and Cincinnati. We'll see San Francisco and Philadelphia and Dallas on the Thursday night games throughout the year. And we won't be stuck with a game that people might consider, a snooze fest between like Baltimore and Chicago, or, maybe if the Jets don't get Aaron Rodgers, the Jets versus the Jaguars, which will be a good game between Trevor Lawrence and Aaron Rodgers if he gets traded there.
Yeah. I think that's just what they need to do. I mean, I like it. Every team got a chance to be on Thursday night. I'm not mad when I see 2 bad teams on primetime, but it was just like almost every Thursday night game was a bad team. Like They might have maybe 3 good games, really good games on Thursday night. Other than
I
that,
thought they had more than that. There was some pretty decent games on Thursday night.
you know, and they need we call it they need to get more teams on they need to get more teams on primetime, I think.
Well, I mean, before they had every team would play a primetime game, but it was going to be on like a Thursday night. Now, you're going to have an opportunity where there are other teams. The best teams are going to play in prime time. That's always been the case. Dallas always plays, 4 or 5 because they get ratings. And so, speaking of Dallas, let's go ahead and get to that because they're the next team to talk about in our rundown here. So let me share here. I've got to find it. I got to close Baltimore. Come over to here. Over here. And there's Dallas. Now, Dallas has certainly done a lot more than, Baltimore has. But the majority of the things that they have done, and you'll find, is they've made some big trades. They've lost quite a few players this offseason because of cost-cutting moves. This is not what I wanted to share. Hang on a minute. This needs to go. Minimize. Open this one. Okay, that's what I want to share. There we go. All right, so the biggest players that I think that they lost in this particular instance, I really like tight end Dalton Schultz. I thought that he was a weapon for them. I can't believe that they couldn't afford to bring him back. But you could see they had to let one of their offensive linemen go too in Connor McGovern. Wide receiver Noah Brown has been a safety valve for Dak at times, over the last couple of seasons. They lost their long snapper. We talked about Trayvon Mullen earlier going to Baltimore, and then Carlos Watkins, the defensive tackle. And then here's the big trades. You got Brandon Cooks comes over from the Houston Texans in a trade with them. They didn't have to pay a whole lot to get him. And I think that, really adds, he's a speedster. Now, I know he's been on a lot of different teams, at the beginning of his career. He's been traded multiple times. But, when it comes to having a tandem of good receivers with him and CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup in the slot, I really think that they've done something good here. They lost a lot last year when they traded away Amari Cooper. He was kind of their speedster, the previous year. And then they traded for cornerback Stephon Gilmore of the Colts. And so, with Gilmore there, I like him. He has been a shutdown corner in the past. Now, maybe he's lost a little bit because he's been traded away. He spent some time with Carolina, and now he's with, he went to Indianapolis. Now he goes to Dallas. I think it's going to be a short-term fix there in their secondary. I don't believe he's being paid a whole heck of a lot. But they re-signed Cooper Rush. And so they've got their backup quarterback. He won several games for them this last year when Dak was down. So I think that's a good move by them to bring him back. Now they had to release Ezekiel Elliott. We all know that. And so how do you replace him? Well, they re-signed Rico Dowdle, but I think he is basically a special teams player. And so they bring in Ronald Jones II, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, basically sat on the bench most of the year for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. He couldn't get on the field because 7th-round rookie Isaiah Pacheco was so outstanding. And so, I think he will fill the short yardage goal line back position that's vacated by Ezekiel Elliott. What do you think when you take a look at the Dallas Cowboys here, Chris?
I mean, they're going to be good. I'm just kind of curious to see how good. See how good that how good that running game is. They're going to be a good team, I think they're going to be a very good team. We'll see how good this year. I want to see how that backfield's going to look without Zeke. I mean, they can only do better. Because I know Pollard had to carry the load most last year. To me, Zeke didn't do that much for them. So I think it was a good call for moving on. I want to see how Brandon Cooks is going to look for them. I want to see how what's his name? Stephen Gilmore. I want to see how he's going to look on their team. Because I was wondering if Stephen Gilmore still has a lot in the tank. I know he's an older player. He did all right with the Colts, but I'm kind of curious to see how good he's truly going to be. I think I like the pickup they did with Dante Flower, Jonathan Haskins, and I do like Vander Ish. He could be a good linebacker. I'm glad to see he's earned his job to stay there. That's good to see out of a young kid. And then Cooper Rush. I mean, I think they could have done better for a backup QB. But, Cooper Rush, he stepped in and played some good football when he had to. He wasn't that bad. So, I mean, obviously he must be a good fit in the locker room as well. And, so why not keep him? They got him for cheap, Ronald Jones. He's had some good games with Tampa, but nothing too spectacular. But he should be able to, maybe back up Pollard. Now, my question is, do you think these guys draft a running back this year? You think that's going to be their first round pick?
No, because they franchise tagged Tony Pollard to be the starter. I think they brought in Ronald Jones II to be their goal line and short yardage back. I think they're still working on – they're going to have to work on the offensive line. They lost Connor McGovern. Now, they restructured the contract of Tyron Smith, their left tackle, so that he could come back because he was making a little bit too much. They drafted Tyler Smith last year. They even had to bring in Jason Peters as a free agent to help get that offensive line to keep it kind of together. But they've still got Zach Martin. They've still got, Tyler Smith and Tyron Smith, but they're going to need to improve their offensive line. I bet that they're going to concentrate on the offensive line and continue to work on their defense because, some of the higher priced players that they had on the team, they're going to be in trouble here in about 2 years because Micah Parsons is going to want to get paid. So they got a lot of players on the team that are making a lot of money. They jettisoned Ezekiel Elliott this offseason. There's a couple other big-time players on the team that are making a lot of money. CeeDee Lamb is going to want to get paid. So they're going to have to navigate this over the next few years very carefully so that they are prepared to pay these big-time players or they're going to end up losing them. Now, luckily, the salary cap goes up every year when we go back to talking about Amazon and the streaming partners and the the broadcast partners. They got to keep them happy so the money keeps rolling in so they can afford to pay these guys. Now, obviously, I think they lost their number one tight end. I think Brandon Cooks basically is going to replace Amari Cooper this year, a year late. Stephon Gilmore is going to come in and he's going to take over for Trayvon Mullen. And so, they're spotting, putting pieces in place to try to keep the team together. Each of the last 2 years, the 49ers have knocked the Cowboys out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so, I'm sure that whatever they think their deficiencies are to overcome that, that's what they're going to work on. Offensive line and defense. If you keep Dak clean back there, he can make plays. And the running game's going to be much better off. I know Pollard's coming off of an injury, but with him being the starter and they no longer have to cater to Ezekiel Elliott and make sure he gets his touches, I think the running game will be much more improved. And I think that the offense in itself will be better because it won't be so predictable. You've got Mike McCarthy is going to be calling the plays this year because their offensive coordinator left and went to the Los Angeles Chargers.
Now I got a question for you. If Cowboys fail again and fall short in the first round, do you think Mike McCarthy gets fired?
No. If he was going to get rid of him, he should have did it this year because Sean Payton was available. I think that Jerry Jones has always wanted Sean Payton. I don't know that there's going to be a coach out there that he can go and acquire and bring in that will be of that type of star power. Now, if McCarthy does get canned, I think Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator who has not left in the last 2 years, he's taken some job interviews with different teams. I think he was offered the job in a couple of places, but it just didn't feel right to him. And he wants to keep the band together in Dallas. I think Dan Quinn would be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys if Mike McCarthy is for some reason canned this year. But I don't think he's going to be. Jerry Jones is notorious for sticking with his coaches way longer than he should. He kept Jason Garrett probably 3 years longer than he should have. Not saying that Jason Garrett is a bad coach, because I don't think he is. And at one point, I thought he was going to get the Los Angeles Chargers head coaching job. But, they needed a new voice in the locker room.
Yeah. I think McCarthy is a good coach, overall. He won a Super Bowl, so you can't take that from him. It just seems like there was so much hype for him to go to Dallas. And it's just been kind of the same story almost over and over the last couple of years. Because I believe Dallas has had a few good teams, to do something, and then they just it seems like every year they just fall short.
Right. Well, it's just a matter of time. Sometimes the chemistry changes on a team, the coaching changes, they bring in a few players, and a lot can happen. We still got the draft coming up. Dallas has quite a few picks, and I would think that despite, trading some of those picks so that they could bring in Cooks and Gilmore, that they're going to use them, where they need them the most, offensive line and defense. And if they do that, they just got to hit good. They got to hit good in the draft. If they hit good in the draft, like Kansas City or, one of these other teams has in recent years, they can make a run. They're still a dangerous team in the NFC. The NFC is the weaker of the conferences, and you can't overlook Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, you're not lying. All the powerhouses are in the AFC right now. I mean, even though I think the Lions are on their way up, but we're not to that level to be a powerhouse quite yet. There's a few teams in the NFC that could become that, but you're not lying there. I mean, the AFC is obviously the favorite. They're probably going to be the favorite probably for the next 2 years to win a Super Bowl, I would say, until the NFC can produce a true dominant team. I mean, right now you got Buffalo, KC. You got the Chargers are just right there, and then we call and then if you got Rodgers going to the Jets, there's another one.
Well, wait till you see the updated standings we'll have at the end of the broadcast. I went through and I edited them based on Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Jet and the other moves that have been made thus far, what I think these teams are going to do this upcoming season, what seeds they're going to get, who's going to make the playoffs. Watch to the end of the broadcast. You'll be sure to see that. But we're going to stay in the state of Texas, Chris. We're going to go to the team that should have had the number 1 pick in the draft, if not for Lovie Smith helping out his old team, the Chicago Bears. We're going to talk about the Houston Texans.
But now, do you blame Lovie Smith?
No.
I don't blame him. He knew he was going to get fired. Why would he lose that game on purpose? If he ain't going to be there, why not win it?
That's right.
I mean,
so take a look here at Houston. Houston is one of those teams that has made a lot of moves, as you can tell here by the graphic that I made. They really packed them in with the free agent signings, 14 of them here in these first few weeks of the off season. And they re-signed quite a few other players. Now, I don't have the players that they lost on this list because there's just too many to overcome. And because they were one of the worst teams in the league, I didn't feel like it was important enough to show all of the, we'll call them the rejects that all ended up going to other teams. But, you start out with they needed to rebolster their offensive line. They lost a few players in that went elsewhere. They lost their center. They lost their one of their tackles. They lost some of their depth. They lost one of their guards. And so they traded with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get Shaq Mason. And so Mason comes in. He's got experience playing for some very good teams. And then, of course, Laramie Tunsil re-signed with the team there at left tackle. He is the highest paid left tackle in football. And guess what? For all you Lamar Jackson fans out there, Laramie Tunsil doesn't have an agent. He did it on his own.
Yeah, because he talked like a grown-up and didn't give teams demands, and he negotiated his deal. See, that's the thing, I mean? It's not, you don't need an agent to get what you want, but you got to be able to sell yourself with real facts and back it up. I mean, you can't be like Lamar and, keep pushing for the highest contract when you don't got the stats or the resume for that exact contract. Because we've mentioned it multiple times. He's just going off of Deshaun Watson, which Watson was crazy to get his deal.
He only got that deal because he didn't want to go to Cleveland.
Oh, for sure.
He didn't want to go to Cleveland when they said, well, we'll fully guarantee the contract and give you all this money. The other teams were like, we're not doing that. And so they outbid the other teams. Just like in free agency, the player usually goes where they're going to get paid the most. And that's why he ended up in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is already in Baltimore. Okay. He's already there. They're not trying to bring a player in, and there's nobody negotiating against them. Okay. No other teams have offered anything. Nobody signed him to an offer sheet. And so he will play on the franchise tag or sign the 3-year, $133 million contract. Those are his options. If he doesn't sign the contract and he doesn't go ahead and sign the franchise, he's basically sitting out. He will never get that money back. And so Laramie Tunsil did a good job here. He's staying with the team. They re-signed a few of the players that they had from last year. But I think when you look at the free agents that they did sign, they brought in some weapons, Chris. They brought in a quarterback that is capable of filling in until whoever they select with the second overall pick, be it Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, maybe they go off the board and go with an Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. We don't know who they're going to pick. We don't know who they like. I have already said that I think Carolina takes CJ Stroud. That means Bryce Young's going to fall here to Houston. They can start Case Keenum, and they can have Bryce Young sit behind him and learn the speed of the game, get to learn the offense, not be thrust in there, especially when you've got a shaky offensive line right now that you're not too sure about. Give him an opportunity to learn the game before you throw him out there and possibly get him hurt.
For sure, but I was gonna say, I think you're right. I mean, why not? It might be a perfect place for him too. Think about it. Alabama, Texas, not that far from each other. He's gonna have a lot of Alabama fans follow him in his pro career. So I mean, if you ask me, that would be a bad team for Young to get drafted to. And they did beef up at receiver, running back, and they got two decent tight ends. Andrew Beck, I'm assuming it's going to be more the blocker. I know me and you both talked about Schultz. And Schultz used to play with Dallas, am I correct?
Yeah, Schultz was from Dallas. Andrew Beck comes over. He's actually he's like a fullback / tight end, like an H-back. He played at Denver. And then when you talked about the running game and the wide receiver game being bolstered, you're not kidding. They really didn't have anybody, this last year. The running game was all predicated on a rookie named Damon Pierce, who played great until he got hurt. And so if he comes back to form from the injury that he sustained this last year, you pair him with Devin Singletary, who comes in from Buffalo. You've got yourself a decent running game. It just depends on if the offensive line can open up holes for them. I think the left side's going to be okay, but it's the right side, that's going to be a little shaky early on until they figure out what they're going to do. And that may be what they do with their second first-round draft pick, is go after an offensive lineman.
Yeah. For sure. I
Just
think
looking here at their defense. You know, they had a pretty good defense last year. The offense just wasn't very good. And the reason that they had a good defense is you got Lovie Smith is a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. Okay. He has been there. He has been to the Super Bowl, you know, with other teams, and he has played, you know, been a head coach in the league at a couple different places. And he knows that defense is important. They had a good defense already, and now they bring in even more good defensive players. Denzel Perryman is a game wrecker at linebacker who was not utilized correctly, I think, when he played for the Raiders, but he's a tackling machine. Sheldon Rankins can stop the run. And while Jimmy Ward can get burned from time to time at safety, you know, he's played very well for San Francisco over the last couple of years. I think that they have made some moves here overall that I think is going to keep them out of the cellar. I think Tennessee is the worst team right now in that division. They lost 7 straight games at the end of the year. I don't believe that they have added to their team enough, and we'll talk about them next week. You know, I don't think they've added enough to their team to get them out of the cellar, especially considering they're looking to trade Derrick Henry. I think Houston is going to battle with Indianapolis for either the second or third position in that division behind Jacksonville.
I think so too. I mean, they have the ability. They're going to step up and be a way better team. And I'm very happy with for Case Keenum, by the way. I think he's one of those guys, you know, he's shown, I mean, the Minneapolis Miracle, you can never take it away from him. I think he's like what's his name? He won the Super Bowl for the Eagles.
Nick Foles.
Yeah, I believe he's like another Nick Foles. He's that dude, if you give him the time and the playing ability, he can really surprise you. I just think you have to be able to give them that. You have to be able to give them, you know, that ability. So I'm really excited to see how he does this year. I'll definitely be paying attention at the Houston, because I'm hoping Case Keenum can turn things around for him.
Well, the next team we're going to talk about, it's kind of crazy. You know, I had picked them to go to the Super Bowl last year, and when I picked them to win, I believed that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be their starting quarterback from the beginning of the season to the end. It starts out with the San Francisco 49ers that Trey Lance begins the season, and they can't keep their quarterbacks healthy. Trey Lance comes in, you know, he's basically sat behind Garoppolo the year before. They didn't even plan for Garoppolo to be there, and instead they decided to keep him around at a reduced rate because he didn't want to leave and go to another team and have to learn a whole new offense. When he's already comfortable there, he feels like it's his team, even though they brought this kid in. He played a few games in his first year because Garoppolo was hurt, showed some flashes because he's mobile, but he's not as accurate as he could be. And, you know, I don't think he plays very well in bad weather, which showed up in Chicago last year in a monsoon. They couldn't move the football at all. And so, but then he gets hurt. Lance gets hurt. They bring Garoppolo in, and wouldn't you know it, San Francisco goes on a run. And they're doing great. They're going down the field. They're making plays, you know, throwing the ball. They're you know, they beat Seattle on a Sunday night game, you know, come back to win the game at the end there. You know, and then they're running the ball great. And they used multiple running backs last year. They had started the season with they had Elijah. Hang on, I got to think of what his name is. I got to find it real quick. He gets hurt. They trade. They ended up using Jerry Wilson Jr., but they traded for Christian McCaffrey. And here we go. It's a good thing I got my book with me tonight. It's Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell's a second year player. He starts as the starting running back. They're doing fine. He gets hurt. Jerry Wilson Jr. comes in. Okay, fine. So he's playing, and he's doing good. Then they trade for Christian McCaffrey. So now Jerry Wilson Jr. is mad because he was the starter. So they trade him to Miami and bring in another guy who ends up playing a lot for him out of Miami. And so the offense has been playing well under Garoppolo. They use multiple running backs because their running game is so strong because they have such a good offensive line. And then Garoppolo goes down. They have to bring in Brock Purdy. Purdy is a rookie. He is Mr. Irrelevant, okay? He's Mr. Irrelevant. He's the last player selected in the draft, and they don't miss a beat. He goes right out there because he played so many years in college as the starter. He showed leadership. He's got accuracy. He's a little bit mobile. Now, he ain't as mobile as Lance, but he can make plays and get out of the pocket. He throws it away when he needs to. He doesn't make mistakes. And San Francisco wins all the games at the end of the year. And, they beat Dallas with Brock Purdy. They go into, the NFC Championship game, and he gets hurt. Garoppolo's not ready to come back and play. They have to turn to Josh Johnson III, and it just doesn't work for them because they lost their quarterback. And so that brings us to what they have done this offseason.
I just want to say this about the 49ers. Let's give a shout out to John Lynch. That dude is a hell of a GM. Because, let's recap a little bit. We say, like you said, Trey Lance starts, gets hurt. Jimmy G starts, gets hurt. The rookie, Mr. Irrelevant, comes in, and you still go to the conference championship game.
Yeah.
That dude, and here's a crazy thing about 49ers. I swear, you can go back to the last probably good 4 or 5 years. Every good team they've had that made the playoffs, at some point in the year, they were banged up and hurt and had a lot of injuries at times. And he's always found the way to make the right moves throughout the season or have the right person on the bench to get them to the playoffs. And that's just a lot of good work. And I believe the 49ers are very close to a Super Bowl under John Lynch. And out of any GM in the league, he's one of the GMs I would love to see win a Super Bowl as a GM, because I really think he deserves it.
He announced this week Brock Purdy is the leader in the clubhouse to be the starter ahead of the first-round draft pick, Trey Lance. And he's coming off of surgery. He basically had the ulnar surgery right here, which is like Tommy John, which is not as serious for a football player as it is for a baseball player, because they're throwing with so much more force. And, they got to paint their spots. As a baseball player, it takes a lot more rehab. Whereas a football player, isn't throwing at 100 mile an hour. They're throwing at 50 mile an hour or whatever. And, while they still have to be accurate, it doesn't have to be pinpoint to get to your guy, and he can make a play for it. And so they said that the surgery was a success. They said that the rehab is progressing as expected, and he will be able to start throwing in 3 months, which means by mid training camp, mid preseason, he'll be able, to get out there and show that he's capable again. And I think it will be a quarterback, a quarterback competition between the two. But, and we'll take a look here, they're not the only two quarterbacks that are going to be on this roster, because they felt it necessary to make sure that they had another capable quarterback. And so they signed Sam Darnold from the Carolina Panthers. And I wouldn't be surprised at all, based on the way injuries go and everything, if Sam Darnold doesn't end up starting at least one game this season, because of the way these quarterbacks seem to be so fragile for the 49ers. Now, I had the 49ers going back to at least the NFC Championship game before free agency began. But as you can see by the top of our graphic here, they have lost a lot of players. Most importantly, look at all of the defensive ends and defensive tackles that have left from that defense. They had an 8-man rotation, and all of these guys, have taken off. You've got Charles Omenihu went to the Chiefs, and Samson Ubicon went to the Colts, and Jordan Willis, went to the Raiders, and Hassan Ridgeway went to the Texans. And, so, you got all these guys that are leaving. They're still going to have Nick Bosa, but, they need to replenish, the defensive end position. It looks like to me that they brought in a couple of guys, but I don't think they're anywhere as talented unless it turns out to be the scheme that helps make it that good. In Cleveland Farrell, who's a former first-round pick, he doesn't even make it to his second contract with the Raiders. And then Austin Bryant.
Yeah. They've added some good players. Austin Bryant, I was kind of upset to see him leave Detroit, but at the same time, I understood why. I think he's going to be a good player for them. They added some people, but they lost a lot of people as well. But I still don't think they're going to fall that off. I think they're going to be close to where they were last year. I did hear a rumor, because what's his name, a free agent, Joey Bosa's brother from the Chargers, is he still a free agent?
Joey Bosa is the brother from the Chargers. I don't think he's a free agent yet. I think he is. He's still with the Chargers. They would have to trade for him. And Nick Bosa, I believe, has signed a contract with the 49ers, so he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, because I heard a report. That's why I asked that, because I seen an article. I didn't really get to read much. It was I want to say a few weeks back, and I was kind of waiting till we actually talked about the 49ers. But I heard a rumor that that there was a possibility of him joining his brother in San Francisco. But like I said, I didn't really read it, so I was just curious on that. I will say this, with Nick Bosa, their defense is going to be good. That kid is a beast. I'm actually surprised on how good he was, because he had an injury bug a lot in college, I feel like, in Ohio State, and to see him perform on defense year after year, that kid's good. So I think with him being there and the ads they got, I don't think their defense is going to fall off with all the players they lost. But then again, it might not be as dominant as last year. But this team being in the NFC, like we discussed, like we were talking about the Cowboys, we both said it. The NFC is the weaker conference. So I would say I would put the 49ers easily in the top 5 of the NFC, even with the players they lost and added. I think as long as Prudy comes back and leads off and plays like he did last year, I think the sky's the limit. And I think they could find themselves right back in the conference championship.
Did you happen to share this to Renegades and to Pigskin people?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I shared it to every group I had. That's why Facebook kicked me out, because I did it too fast. So
Yeah.
So they thought I got hacked. But I'm really excited to see Prudy play. And here's the question while we're on the subject. So you got Sam Darnold with the 49ers. So what the hell happens with Trey Lance?
Well, I still think that he will compete, only if they get through training camp and Purdy's 100% and Sam Darnold shows that he has the ability to run this offense, will they consider trading Trey Lance? I don't think that they're going to do that. I think that they consider him an asset. And despite the fact that they paid so much to move up and draft him, he's young enough that they can afford to let him sit around and see what happens at least another year or two. They don't have to exercise a fifth-year option until the end after next season, not this upcoming season, but after the next season. And so, they've got time here. They don't have to rush anything. He's on a rookie contract. And so while he is getting paid quite a bit because of the rookie contract, they can overcome it right now.
Yeah. I honestly think they're going to hold on to him. Because I don't think there's a big market on him right now. But what I think happens is if everything works out with Prudy, I think he'll be trade bait at the deadline. I think the 49ers are going to sit back and see who really needs a quarterback around the trade deadline, and then they're going to make their decision. And
well, just a quick run through here, real quick here for the 49ers. Just things that we didn't necessarily mention. Mike McGlinchey left. So that's a big hole, an offensive tackle for them. Now they brought in Matt Pryor from the Colts, and he might be, like a one-year stopgap while they try to draft him another offensive tackle. I'm concerned about all of the defensive line players that have left. Robbie Gould is out, but they traded for Zane Gonzalez. They got him from Carolina. So he's probably going to be the starter and kicker for sure. They managed to re-sign a few of their players, but as you can see, they did lose quite a bit of players. I'm not sure that the players that they brought in can live up to the players that left. And so I think that San Francisco is down a little bit compared to this last season. I'm not saying that they can't rise based on what they do in the draft, but as of right now, it's not looking like they're an NFC championship caliber team because of their losses on defense.
Yeah.
The next team that I wanted to talk about, I'll let you pick. Do you want to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders or the Indianapolis Colts?
Let's go with the Raiders.
All right, we'll go with the Raiders first. And the Raiders have done a lot. I thought Houston had done a lot. This first page that we're going to show is basically all of the players that they lost and players that they have re-signed. And so we'll begin here. We know their quarterback left. They released Derek Carr because they couldn't work out a trade with anybody. He wasn't willing to waive his no trade clause. This damn thing. I don't know why it does that. Give me 1 second here, and I want to find it again. Okay, I've got the Raiders. The first one of the Raiders. And then I'm going to go here. And I'm going to share just this page. All right, so Derek Carr goes to the Saints. Jared Stidham leaves and goes to the Broncos. You know, Mac Hollins leaves. He goes, I believe, to the Falcons. They traded, I couldn't believe this. I cannot believe they traded Darren Waller to the New York Giants. But, you know, I think that, and we'll look at this in a minute, I think they picked up a diamond in the rough to replace him. And I think he could be just as good depending on if they utilize him correctly. But you look at, you know, Denzel Perryman, we talked about him, you know, going to the Houston Texans. Sidney Jones is out. You know, they lost these guys. They franchise tagged Josh Jacobs. And he hasn't signed the franchise tender yet. But, you know, he led the league in rushing last year after they failed to pick up his fifth-year option, which is amazing to me because I really think either the fifth-year option was going to be cost prohibitive and they knew they'd be able to franchise him and it would be cheaper for them because if they franchise him, they can work out a long-term deal. But I would have picked up the fifth-year option. I thought he was been a really good player for him during his career there. And, you know, he proved that he's just getting better and better right now. He's in his prime. You know, it helps that you got a team that wants to run the football. And they re-signed quite a few of their players, but they had to let quite a few of their players go. I like them keeping Keelan Cole. He's more of a special teams player, but I thought that he has played well for them in the action that I've seen. Amir Abdullah is obviously going to be the backup running back. Now, they still have Zahir White, who they picked up as a rookie last year in the draft, but he had limited action last year. I thought that there was a chance because of the way that they were dealing with Josh Jacobs, that he could end up being the starter and that they was going to trade Josh Jacobs at the trading deadline. But he was running over everybody. And so it worked out better for Josh and not so much for Zahir White. Just looking at who they re-signed and who they lost so far, what do you think, buddy?
I think me personally, I think they're on their way to a disaster. I think they might be worse than they were last year.
Well, and maybe it's all up to the new players that they brought in because, like I said, they have a lot of players that they have brought in, and we're going to get to that. Because I've got a whole nother page of Raiders. They have signed just a ton of players in free agency. And, of course, we talked about Jimmy Garoppolo leaving the 49ers. He is, you know, they're going to be the starting quarterback there for Vegas. And he's the top pickup, really for their team.
I mean,
They bring in Jacoby Myers from the New England Patriots. Philip Dorsett comes in from the Colts, and he has played in the New England style system before when he has been a New England Patriot. So you got all three of these top guys are former New England Patriots coming in to play for Josh McDaniels in his offense here in Vegas. They bring in, they weaken the Chargers by taking their kick returner away. DeAndre Carter was showing some flashes in the slot last year when they had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were hurt for the Chargers last year. DeAndre Carter showed a lot, I thought. And then here's the diamond in the rough that I was talking about, and that's O.J. Howard. He's bounced around a little bit since he started his career in Cleveland. I think he went to Buffalo, and then he ended up with the Buccaneers temporarily, but he got hurt. Played last year for the Texans. He's going to come in here and try to replace Darren Waller. And I think that O.J. Howard, if utilized correctly, can be a really good player for them. And then you take a look at the defensive guys that they added. The biggest name on this list is Robert Spillane. He comes over from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, they added some decent players. It's just, they got Jimmy G. I see, my bad. I totally threw a blank. I keep forgetting they had Jimmy G. I mean, with Jimmy G and the people they added, they could be decent. I just not ready. I just don't trust McDaniels. I don't trust him as a head coach.
Well, and they're in a tough division. I mean, I know
they're in a tough division, but
Sean Payton going to Denver is really going to it's going to bring them up. He's not going to settle for the kind of crap that Denver went through last year. I expect that the defense will remain tough, but the offense is really going to come along in Denver. Of course, you're playing the former Super Bowl champs and the Chiefs. They're going to be tough. And the Chargers made the playoffs last year. I know they blew that big lead against the Jaguars, but, they're a team that I plan to talk about next week. I think that they have improved themselves. They're slowly getting better year after year. Raiders may end up being the team that's in the cellar this season.
Yeah. I mean, see, to me, this is why it's hard for me. And it's because look at McDaniels when he was with Denver. He destroyed that team real fast. And they didn't do good. He got fired. They hired their John Fox. Was it John Fox?
They brought in Fox after that.
And then he goes with Peyton Manning and wins the Super Bowl. With basically the same team, the only difference was Peyton Manning. And
John Fox and Gary Kubiak tag teamed that whole deal.
And now here he is with Oakland, and he did the same thing he did in Denver. Got rid of the starting quarterback that he inherited. He did the same thing in Denver with Jay Cutler to the Bears when he coached.
Well, and I know that happened when he was in Denver. The difference is that he tried to replace a proven quarterback with a rookie that everybody knew was not an NFL quarterback in Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't have the arm strength. Yes, he has the mobility and the leadership. And there were things about him he was able to accomplish, but he just wasn't. You got to have accuracy and you got to have arm strength. And, those are two of the most important things about playing quarterback in the NFL.
So
this guy has played for him before. He knows the system. He's a proven quarterback. He lost one game last year as the starter for the 49ers when he was playing. Okay. Yes, he had a lot of great players around him, and that's what the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, are trying to do here, is surround him with players that can make plays. They've still got Hunter Renfrow. They've still got Devontae Adams. Now they add Jacoby Myers and Philip Dorsett. Okay. They bring in O.J. Howard. Now they're not going to have Frank Moreau because he, I guess has cancer or something, and they traded Darren Waller away. So O.J. Howard is the tight end target right now for the team here for the Raiders. And then defensively, I think Robert Spillane's going to fill in for Denzel Perryman. I think that, the players that they have brought in, I wouldn't overlook their ability to make some noise. Just because they're going to be probably the fourth team in that division doesn't mean they ain't going to have, one, a winning record, and two, cause a lot of trouble in the AFC.
Yeah. I'm curious. I can't wait to see your division. I'm going to try to watch as much games as I can out of your division, to be 100%. Because I think even with the Raiders, even though I don't trust McDaniels, I still think they could be better. I want to see how good they are. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. Because, you do make some valid points. Jimmy G does know Josh McDaniels pretty good. So maybe I could just be overlooking things. But I want to see how good Denver's going to be. I want to see how good Oakland's going to be, and the Chargers and KC. Because I'll be honest, if you guys are all good, you guys could have the best division in football. And
that's what they were saying last year. That's what they said last year. They brought in Khalil Mack to the Chargers, and they brought in Devontae Adams to the Raiders, and Chandler Jones to the Raiders. And then the Chiefs had to trade Tyreek Hill, and they're all like, well, the Chiefs are going down, and the rest of the division's coming up. Could be the best division in the AFC. I don't think so. I think the best division in the AFC this year is going to be the AFC East. You've got the Buffalo Bills that are going to, I don't know what kind of resurgence they're going to have. They've lost a lot of players on defense. They're another team we're going to look at in the coming weeks and spotlight. But they lost Devin Singletary on offense at the running game. Isaiah McKenzie left and went to the Colts. So that some of their playmakers are gone. The Jets are going to be much improved, especially if they've got Aaron Rodgers. The Patriots are looking to improve. Bill Belichick might be on the hot seat in New England, and Miami has made some strides this offseason. That looks like a really, really tough division to me. Of course, we have talked about the AFC being the superior conference right now. It's loaded.
Yep, you got that right. I do think, I know we're not talking Denver, but I do think Denver's going to come out of the gate early and really show that they're not the same team. I think you're going to see some of the best football out of Russell Wilson, if you really want my opinion.
Yeah.
I will be shocked. I would be very shocked if Russell Wilson comes out and has a similar year to last year.
Right.
And that would mean Denver's in huge trouble if that happens again.
Well, I just think that it's going to depend on what the schedule looks like, early on. We don't have a schedule yet. That's an important part of how these teams begin the season, of how, their records may look. If you've got an easy schedule early on, it kind of helps you get some momentum as you go towards this into the, latter part of the season. But if you've got, you got yourself a team that's got a hard schedule early, you find out if they've got grit. You find out how good they really are going to be. And sometimes because the schedule is too good, you go into a situation where you find out that, if they have a rough early part of the season, the team just kind of lays down and dies on them.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the final team that we're going to take a look at here in this week's broadcast, and that's the Indianapolis Colts, kind of concentrating a little bit on the AFC South this week. And so the Indianapolis Colts have done some things here. They lost a lot of players, but I think a lot of the players that they let go or jettisoned or ended up elsewhere were players that they didn't necessarily want to keep. And so my screen has gone blank.
Of course, it never fails. I'm so sorry for everybody watching. I appreciate you guys, watching tonight. Facebook has not been our friends at all today. It's either his screen going out, Facebook locking me out, trying to accuse me of.
All right, well, I will be right back. Okay, I will be right back. And when I come back, we're going to talk about the Colts. Until then, just give us a couple minutes. I apologize.
It's all good, buddy. I'll keep everybody entertained. We caught up. Today's just been a day. Just to do the show, I had to work all weekend up north in Michigan and do a cabin just to do the show. And then Facebook today, in the middle of the live stream, kicked me out. Dave's computer's messing up. He'll be right back. So just bear with me, guys. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. No, there's gonna be this season is gonna be a great NFL season. There's so much things that could literally change going into this year. Like we were just talking about Oakland, or not Oakland, Vegas. I keep calling them Oakland. The AFC West could be one of the strongest divisions in football, and I'm very excited for it. I also think NFC North could be another division. So I'm just going to talk about, I think it's going to be good divisions. AFC South, I think is going to be another great division to watch this year, especially if Tua can stay healthy. All that. I'm kind of anxious to see how good Miami is with their additions they made. That's another good division is going to be. NFC South could be another good one between Atlanta and the Saints. Or not AFC South, NFC South. AFC South is going to be interesting with Tennessee, especially if they trade Henry. Depending on who's playing quarterback with the Colts. There's so much questions and so much moves this year that it's getting pretty exciting. If you guys in the comments comment what division you think is going to be the best division in the football this year. I want to know everybody's opinion. So if you're watching this, let me know what you guys think would be the best division to watch in NFL this year. Because I'm going to say probably the first couple weeks is going to be the AFC West, especially if Oakland turns out or not Oakland, but Vegas Raiders turn out to be good with Jimmy G. And then Denver comes back strong with Sean Payton. And then the Chiefs. I really hope that happens. And I only want to say this, I'm not going to take nothing from the Chiefs because they've earned it. But I want to see them actually have to fight. I mean, fight to win the division. I want to see them actually have to battle for that. To me, they've never had a truly fight for that number one seed. Don't get me wrong. I mean, every team has to fight, but the Chargers are the only team that's got close to give them a fight, but they've always fell off there at the end, and it wasn't a close fight. I want to see the Chiefs actually have to, fight for that first spot because they've got that division with the last 3-4 years by ease. I think the Chargers only beat them twice, maybe twice to 3 times max in the last 3-4 seasons. And I don't think Denver's even beat them in the last couple of years. We got David back.
Yeah, and I'm all weird looking.
Yeah, you're back. I see your background, but for some reason the background's low.
Stupid.
You're looking like the kind of like American flag right now with some teams popping through.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, huh? Yes, I have a green screen. There we go.
He's back.
I'm working on it, buddy. I'm trying to get everything back the way it was.
I'm going to give you
okay, so in the hopes that this works. Okay, good. Let's try this. See if we can get it to go. We're going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts and what they have done. They gave away Matt Ryan, and they let some other players walk. They traded Stephon Gilmore to the Dallas Cowboys for a draft pick, or maybe more than one. I'm not real certain, but their team, was really close. I thought a couple of years ago to making, a run at the Super Bowl, especially when they had Andrew Luck. It feels like they've been a quarterback away because they've got a good running game in Jonathan Taylor. They've got themselves some good wide receivers, I like, Michael Pittman Jr. I think they've got some really good tight ends on the team. And they have added now this offseason, some even more impressive, weapons on both offense and defense. Last year, Shaq Leonard, formerly known as Darius Leonard, was, basically injured all year long. They went from Matt Eberflus as the defensive coordinator. He leaves to become the head coach of the Chicago Bears. And so Gus Bradley comes in to be the defensive coordinator. And it's a completely different shift on the way that they were running their defense. The defense took a big hit last year. It was nowhere near as good as it was under Eberflus. And because, Shaq Leonard didn't play, a whole hell of a lot, he's their big-time player in the middle. I think that really hurt their team overall. And so hopefully this upcoming season, we're going to find that he is going to be healthy. they've got a new offensive play caller, new defensive play caller. And here we are, we're looking at who they have lost this offseason and who they have gained. And as I said earlier on in the broadcast, I didn't think that the players that they let walk or traded away were players that they necessarily really wanted to keep, And so you've got Shane Steichen is coming over to be the new head coach. He was the offensive coordinator for the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. And he brings with him the backup quarterback that knows the system in Gardner Minshew. And I think no matter what they do with the number 4 pick, if they decide that they're going to select a quarterback, I think they will learn behind Gardner Minshew, who will be the starter this first season. Excuse me. And then, hopefully Jonathan Taylor is going to come back and be healthy this season. We talked about Michael Pittman Jr. at wide receiver. They had Alec Pierce last year come in as a rookie. Now they add Isaiah McKenzie from the Buffalo Bills, who Buffalo had to cut for salary cap reasons. He comes in here. They add Pharaoh Brown, and then the player that I'm most interested in seeing here is defensive end Samson Ebukam. He comes over from the 49ers. He's a sack machine. He's a really good defensive end. He plays strong against the run. I think that he can be the anchor on that defensive line for the Colts. And if you got Shaq Leonard behind that defensive line healthy, this defense could take a turn for the better this year, Chris.
I think so too. I think the biggest concern on this team is Gardner Minshew. Can he play? If he plays at elite level, they're playing in a weak division, especially if Henry's gone. The only dominant team really in that division you could say right now is Jacksonville. I mean, who else could you really? I mean, Houston, they're going to be definitely better than what they were last year, but I don't think they're going to be all that better yet. Depending on how Case Keenum comes out. I mean, they got a chance, but who's going to be the dominant team? You know what I mean? Could they trump and make the wild card? Is it going to be Houston that can make a wild card? The Colts? Or maybe Tennessee? I mean, you can't count Tennessee out yet, but without Henry, if Henry's gone out of Tennessee, how good is Tennessee really going to be?
Not very good. I don't think they're going to be very good. And I don't think that anybody in this division, I expect Houston to be a lot better. I think they can be around 500. I think the Colts can challenge for a wild card, even with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, because you're going to see that Philadelphia Eagle offense. They're going to run the football, okay? They're going to run the football. They've got Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be back. I think he's not going to have any problems coming back from his injuries, and he's going to play well for them. And I think they're going to throw the ball around the yard with these receivers that they've got. Steichen comes over here, and what is so interesting about him being hired is he is a disciple of the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, which is Nick Sirianni. Well, Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen worked for Frank Reich. Frank Reich was the head coach of the Colts before Shane Steichen. Okay, so here you are. You're basically, in my opinion, they have admitted that they made a mistake with Frank Reich. Okay. He should not have been fired. It was the defensive coordinator, the lack of defense. I don't think he wanted Matt Ryan. I think he wanted to stick with Carson Wentz because it had been the second year with Carson Wentz, knowing all his receivers. And I think that he thought that they would be a lot better off with him And so he had some infighting with the general manager and the owner. And because he wasn't happy there, they knew he wasn't happy there. He wasn't getting his say. He's going to get his say in Carolina. And I think he's going to show that the Colts made a mistake not listening to their head coach and going with the program that he wanted to go with. And I think that the Colts here are going to show that they knew they had made a mistake. And Shane Steichen's going to do a great job here for Indianapolis. I think that they're going to play well. Probably not going to make the playoffs because they're in a loaded conference. Okay. When you look at it, and now we will, okay, you've got Kansas City and the Chargers in the West. They both made the playoffs last year. You've got Buffalo, probably the New York Jets, because they're going to have Aaron Rodgers. There's two more teams. You've got the division winners, Jacksonville and Cincinnati. Pittsburgh's coming up with Pickett. The Colts are coming up now, you know, because they've got a low pick here. They've got an opportunity to set themselves up for the future. You've got other teams like the Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Watson, who's going to come in with a full off season and kick it off from the beginning. You've got Baltimore. Are they going to have Lamar Jackson? I don't think they are. I think at this point, they're going to go with the, you know, Stetson Bennett route or the Tyler Huntley route, because there's nothing else that the Ravens are willing to offer, and nobody out there is going to be, you know, going to give up 2 first-round draft picks and have to pay all that kind of money to get him. You know, Miami is going to be in the thick of it. And so, you know, just one more once over here at the Indianapolis Colts before we move on and we look at the predictions going forward. Darrington Evans, the running back, comes in from Chicago. I don't know much about him, but I think he, you know, is probably a special teams third running back on the roster, because he'll be behind Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. Christian Wilkerson is kind of like a kick returner. And, you know, and then they got Taven Bryan at defensive tackle. They can pair him with DeForest Buckner. And between the two of them, that'll really help them stop the run. So I think that's a good move there. So before I reveal the division picks right now and who I think is going to, as of this moment, before the draft, before we see the schedule and we know we know who they're playing, just not when they're playing them. Weather conditions early in the season, Thursday night, Monday night, Sunday night, all those things factor in. You know, there's a couple of these stadiums drive me crazy. They schedule these games at, like, you know, the 4:25 time frame, and the sun is in the eyes of the offense for the first quarter and a half. That matters. The receiver, you know, the quarterback can't see the receivers because the sun's in his face, or the sun's in the face of the receivers when they turn around to look to find the ball. They can't see it. You know, I hate that when they do that.
Yeah.
I watch these games that don't have domes, and I'm not saying all the teams should have domes or anything like that. I'm happy with the way that, you know, some of them are domes, some of them are open field, open air, you know, but I hate that when they schedule the games, they don't take into account, you know, the sun. The sun bothers some of these teams, you know, and so all of that figures into, you know, their records, because you may not get off to a good start.
See,
Tell me who you think right now, if you're picking the divisions before I show you, who do you like in the NFC East? Philadelphia, Dallas, Washington, or New York?
Fucking hard. I'm still going to ride. I'm still going to ride with Philly.
Okay. NFC North, Detroit, Minnesota, Green Bay, Chicago.
I'm going to be a homer.
Well,
Detroit.
yeah.
I think it's Detroit's division to lose.
Okay. NFC South, you got New Orleans, Carolina, Atlanta, Tampa Bay.
New Orleans.
Okay. NFC West, 49ers, Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals.
49ers.
Okay. AFC West, Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos.
Even though while you were, resetting your computer and stuff, I was just talking about like the divisions, what divisions I think are going to be tough. And I said, I want to see KC have the toughest division because I want a true test to see if they can win it.
Okay.
Because I feel like you guys haven't had a true test in your division for the title. You know what I mean? I'm not saying the playoffs, just in your division. The rest of your teams have not really gave you that much of a fight for the number one seed in the last few seasons. But
Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated on the road in the division since he became starter.
So, but I still think the Chiefs will win the division.
Okay. AFC North, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland, or Pittsburgh.
Cincinnati.
Okay. AFC South, Jacksonville, Tennessee, Houston, and Indianapolis.
Jacksonville.
AFC East, Buffalo, New York Jets, New England Patriots, Miami Dolphins.
I'm going to say Miami, as long as Tua stays healthy.
Okay. As long as Tua stays healthy. See, it's little things like that that make a world of difference.
Yep.
And so here we go. I'm going to show you what I've got right now. This is before the draft and the schedule timing. I think that Buffalo has taken a back step, especially defensively. They lost, their linebacker. They lost their safety. They've lost some players on offense, including McKenzie and Singletary. And I think the addition of Aaron Rodgers helps the New York Jets win the AFC Eastern Division. I got the Buffalo Bills making the playoffs. They're only going to be one game back. The reason that the win totals are not as high as they could be, just such a tough conference. I got Cincinnati Bengals winning the AFC North, but it's going to be by a slim margin. It's going to be head-to-head with Pittsburgh. Jacksonville will win the AFC South, and I still got the Kansas City Chiefs winning the West, but Denver is going to make the playoffs.
I agree.
And so the matchups in the first round, Kansas City gets the first round bye. You're looking at a matchup between the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've got the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Buffalo Bills in the first round, and Denver goes to Jacksonville in the wild card round. In the NFC, I believe in the Dallas Cowboys. I think Philadelphia has just lost too much defensively in free agency. I think they've lost some pieces offensively, especially Miles Sanders at running back. And I think that Dallas has done enough, to improve themselves despite some of their losses. I think because of that running game, having Tony Pollard as the main runner the entire season, using Ronald Jones on those short yardage and goal line sets, they're going to outlast Philadelphia, who will still make the playoffs. I got your Detroit Lions winning the division because of the head-to-head matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. I like Derek Carr and that defense of the New Orleans Saints to win the NFC South. And in a surprise, I have the Seattle Seahawks beating the 49ers in the NFC West. The things that they have done while San Francisco has lost so much on defense, I think that might be the difference. Plus, I expect there to be some sluggish play early on in the season while they figure out who their quarterback is going to be. And so in the wild card round, we'll have Dallas gets the first round bye. The Seattle Seahawks will host the Philadelphia Eagles, and that'll be a really good game. I got the Minnesota Vikings are going to play at Detroit for the chance to go to the next round, and San Francisco goes into New Orleans on Wild Card Weekend. What do you think, Chris?
I think I agree with most of it. I just you threw me off. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say you're completely wrong with the Jets. I don't think the Jets could be the number 2 seed in the AFC. I definitely think it becomes between them and Miami, but I think Miami's defense is still going to be better than the Jets this year, just with the additions they've done with free agency. They were good last year, and then you add Ramsey there. I think it puts them on a whole different level. But I could see why you got them ranked where you're at, just because we really don't know if Tua's going to make it through the whole season. So all in wrong, I see what route you went. I do think Buffalo is going to be in there. I'm just starting to lose faith in the Buffalo, what they got going on. I feel like they should have had they could have went to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. They choked both times this year. Now they lost quite a few players. They're tough on cap. So I agree overall with that division. I still think Miami can win it though over the Jets and be the 2 seed if Tua stays 100% healthy. Eagles, I still think the Eagles can pull it off in the East, but they did lose a lot of defense, and I think Dallas would be my second pick. We both picked Cincinnati. I think you did shock me a little bit with the Steelers record, because I thought the Browns would be a little bit better than them, but that also depends a lot on Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I've got Baltimore at 6-11 here.
I agree with that.
I don't think that Lamar Jackson plays for the team.
Me either.
I think that he is going to force his way out of town in some way, or he sits out the year because he doesn't want to play on the franchise tag.
Yeah, I could totally see that happening. Jacksonville, we both agree on that. Chiefs, Broncos. I could see the Chargers being a tad bit better than 9-8 though, but we got to see how it plays out. I agree with the North. I don't think Green Bay is going to be too hot this year. The Bears, I think I'm right there with you on the Bears. They're going to have 9 wins. I agree with the Saints and Seattle and the 49ers. They're going to be the 2 teams that battle for 1 and 2 for sure. So, overall, we're pretty close on our predictions.
Well, I feel real good about it right now. Of course, we've still got more free agency to go. We've still got the draft. And then after the draft, they're going to have the schedule release. And then all of these other free agents that are not getting any bites right now, the older veterans, they're going to get sucked up in free agency finally and sign with teams. You've got guys out there that haven't signed a deal with anybody yet because, they're waiting on big money, or they're waiting on a certain contract, or they got released and haven't been picked up by anybody. Keenan Allen is available from the Chargers. No one's picked him up yet.
I'm surprised.
T. Higgins is a free agent with Cincinnati. He's still working on getting a contract done. You've got you know, a lot of players that are out there are available, and they're waiting to see what happens until probably after the draft. We may not know what happens with Lamar Jackson until after the draft. Baltimore's got a high enough pick. If somebody falls to them, maybe they'll go ahead and pick somebody in the first round to be their quarterback.
I wouldn't.
Or will they go the Stetson Bennett route? We'll just have to wait and see to find out. When it comes to the draft, my top 5 is still the same, which I'll show everybody here real quick. My top 5 is still the same from last time that I showed it. When I did a little mock draft, I think that C.J. Stroud is still going to go number 1 to the Carolina Panthers. And because they've got, you know, Andy Dalton there, they've got an opportunity to have him sit and learn a little bit. He doesn't necessarily have to come right out of the gate and play right away. Same thing for Houston. You got Bryce Young coming in with the second pick. Case Keenum can start, and Bryce Young can learn from him. Cardinals need defense. J.J. Watt retired. Chandler Jones was traded last year to the Raiders. Here's Will Anderson Jr. at 3. Anthony Richardson goes to the Colts. Could be Will Levis, but if he goes to the Colts, he can learn behind Gardner Minshew. He's got a lot of upside, but he didn't start a lot in college. He's really raw, and he needs some opportunity to learn at the feet of a professional quarterback. Minshew's been in the league for several years now. He's played for 3 different organizations by the time he starts for the Colts this year. And then the Seahawks bring in some more defense by bringing in Tyree Wilson at edge. So there's my top 5 going into, this upcoming draft. That's who we expect to be taken in the top 5. I know we've talked about it. We've asked people, if you're watching the video, if you're watching us live, please, you don't have to do too much. Put down the name of the team that you root for in the comment section so we can find you. We need somebody who's a Carolina Panther fan. We need somebody who's a Houston Texan fan, Arizona Cardinals. Okay, we need people that are fans of teams out there, because we're going to hold a mock draft before the actual draft, and we're going to show, we'll call your name. We'll say, hey, we talked to this person. They're a Carolina Panther fan. They like C.J. Stroud with the number 1 pick, and that we'll do the draft just like that. We'll talk to each of you ahead of time. We'll tell you who's available. You tell us who you like. We'll announce our mock draft the week before the draft right here on the Sunday Spectacular.
Yes. And also, if you're one of a fan from a team, we like to try to get fans on here to talk about their team, and I interview them. So if you're interested in maybe doing a show, message me or David, and we'll set something up. Now, we got a show set for Thursday this week. There might be one on Tuesday. I'm not sure if there will be one on Tuesday or not. So just pay attention, because, I always share the banner and let you guys know when we're doing a show. Always come to like the page and follow. You'll know, you'll get turn the notifications on, and it'll let you know when we're live at all times. As well as that, we're really trying to do some things around here and get some cool things going through the season. I wouldn't mind doing a show throughout the week. Maybe, get a couple of us and we can discuss stuff and talk a little bit. There's a lot of potential, but for right now, we want to focus on getting this mock draft filled up with teams. So right now, like David said, please leave us a comment or message us. Either one works. Let us know what team you want to cover, and we'll mark you down and we'll go through it. And like you said, we'll do all the hard work. All you got to do is pick the player when we tell you what's available and what you think your team's going to do. Other than that, that's all I got.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can see if we can get somebody for a Tuesday night interview, but Thursday night, I'm looking forward to watching you interview Josh Dodd. He's a big fan of the New England Patriots. I'm sure he'll want to talk about Mac Jones and what his expectations are for this upcoming season, the guys that they've added and lost during the offseason, and probably talk some AFC East while you're at it.
I'm actually really excited for this one. I think this is going to be a great show, and if you're watching, I don't think you want to miss out on Thursday. There's a lot of things. I've been looking forward to talking to a Patriot fan because, you know, with the Lions being bad over the years, in previous years, Brady's always, you know, from my favorite college, always had to support him. So there's a lot of Super Bowls I had to root for the Patriots. So this one's going to be interesting for me because even though I got sick of them myself and winning all the time, at the same time, I was happy because the best quarterback ever played at Michigan, Tom fucking Brady.
You mean it's not Brian Greasy?
I mean, Brian Greasy won us in that. Won us in that.
Chad Henne.
But unfortunately, he didn't do no much in the pros. And Chad Henne, I'm glad you got 2 Super Bowls. Might have been as a backup, but you deserve it, bud.
Yeah.
He was my first quarterback of my life that I truly remember from start to end of his career. So he's always held a special part in my mind. And I always felt bad that I always thought he was going to be the next good quarterback out of Michigan, but stuff didn't pan out. But you know what? He was a good backup quarterback.
It panned out. He got paid, didn't have to play all that much, got 2 Super Bowl rings. Happy retirement, Chad Henne.
With this, 2 rings. And I mean, when he did have to play, he did step in and do a good job though. You know, you can't, I mean, was he elite level? Of course not. But you know, for a backup level, he was a pretty good backup. And you know, we've seen it with the 49ers. If you got good backup depth and a good team around you, you can still do stuff just like the Eagles. Look at the Eagles with Foles. You know, who thought the Eagles would win the Super Bowl that year with Nick Foles starting the playoffs? I don't think any of us seen that or picked it to happen.
I had him get eliminated early on.
Exactly my point. So to me, when you can make a career as a backup quarterback, get 2 Super Bowls out of it, and keep your job and not lose it, because you always see backups every year with this team and they're with another team and with another team. And he was with you guys for what? Good, solid?
He was there, I think, 5 years.
So
he came in when they let Alex Smith go and they traded him to Washington. Then they had to bring in a backup quarterback and they brought in Henne during that same time. So all these years that Mahomes has been the starter, he's been his backup. And now he's going to have a new backup this year in Shane Buechele.
Shane Buechele.
All right, guys. Another good broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we always end up having some sort of technical difficulty, but we make it through it.
Exactly. Thank you guys for joining us again. It's been another great night on a Sunday night with Dave. I'm glad I was able to get done with work and get back home to do this broadcast. So until next week, we'll see you Thursday for sure. Check back and wait for the poster to see if we're doing one on Tuesday. If not, we'll be here on Thursday, 8 o'clock, talking with Josh Dodd about the New England Patriots. So other than that, it's 4TH&GOAL broadcast. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night, David. It's always been a pleasure. Thank you.
We'll see you, everybody.
See you later, guys.